Welcome everyone to week 8 services marketing. Let's get straight into it. I'm not going to waste your time this week. All right, so looking at what we have to do for this chapter 9, but week 8 of the course, is understand the 4 defining characteristics of a service, understand how services differ from physical goods, explain how marketers manage service quality, and understand how organizations market service products. So we are here in the course is creating the value proposition, and so we're still understanding how to create that value proposition and then take that into the marketplace. So what is a service? Now, we talked about this last week on product, about how we have a difference between tangible and intangible products. A service is anything which is intangible. So think intangible, which is something you can't hold or touch or feel. So services, though, are a massive area of the Australian economy, accounting for 75% of the workforce. Intangibles are performance-based products that can't be touched. Things like accounting services or a music performance are examples of a service. They are the fastest growing sector of the Australian economy, and we can expect that to continue well into the future as Australia becomes a highly developed service-based economy. So examples are everywhere with service industries. The list is numerous, and in fact most industry categories have services now as their core. And an example here of how we might market an artistic product. So with this, think music act or artistic act of any sort. So this might be theatre, as it is in this case here. So how you might develop a marketing plan for that. And again, it's the same for most products out there, is how you develop your strategies, how you think about your consumer and your segments. But the thing to understand how it might differ, of course, is the intangibility and separability of what a service is. So this is the characteristics of services. It is worth marking this slide down as one to learn, is about how a service differs from physical products. So we have the intangibility aspect. In other words, we can't touch or feel or smell it. It makes services very different to evaluate, of course, as well. And it means that service marketers try to provide physical cues to reassure the buyer. But inseparable, it's very hard to separate parts of a service delivery away from the entire offering the consumer gets and then put the value based around that one aspect. The firm's employees and facilities can't be detached, for example, from the service offering. So when I deliver a lecture, when you get the lecture or this recording even, the way I deliver it can't be separated out to make it fantastic or fancier or change the background. I wish. But hey, that might come in the future. The other aspects of a service, it's the perishability of the service itself, and it means that once it's delivered, that's it. It's gone. It can't be re-delivered the same way. It might be slightly different the next time you get it, but that particular service offering is unique in itself. The variability of the service means that it may vary each time it is performed. So there could be a difference in how I perform this lecture this time around here in video. If I have to do it again, it's going to be different. It'll be the same content, but the way I deliver it is going to be different because of the uniqueness of the service offering. So some of the strategies you may want to consider here based on table 9.1, we have intangibility. So things you can do, the intangibility is provide tangibility through the physical appearance of the facility itself. So how we might actually have lighting or air conditioning or music or comfortable chairs and seating can make that intangible more tangible. And this is what I talked about in the last chapter with products and branding, is how there is a very fine line now, and a blurred line at that, between a tangible and intangible product. You can't really see it in some cases. It's one and the same. So as I said last week, and I'll say again now to you, that while the theory might be very distinct, in practice it might be very, very different altogether. We can also have furnishings, employee uniforms, all these sort of things here as a way of adding a more tangible value offering in the consumer's head to what otherwise might be an intangible offering. So we're providing a higher sense of value by adding the tangibility aspect. And again, we have other ways we can highlight the value in an intangible offering by things like a better service encounter with training of a staff. We can also do demand-based pricing to encourage people to use services off peak periods and take demand away from peak periods, so we can have the consistency of service offering. Now, I talked about this in the last chapter as well, but we have a difference when it comes to the marketing mix for services, which is we add 3 additional elements, which are people, physical facilities or evidence, as some people call it, and process. So we have the 7 Ps. Now, I will say this, you don't have to do the 7 Ps. 4 is enough, okay? So some people have already asked me in the course, because they're doing a service for their major assignment topic, whether they should be doing the 7 Ps. No, I will not be evaluating anyone in the course on the 7 Ps. I will only if you choose to do them, okay? It is your decision, but you'll still get the same mark at the end of the day compared to someone who does the 4 Ps. You're all assessed the same way. There is no difference. You don't need to do the 7 Ps. 4 is enough. And in fact, with the word count the way it is, I'd highly advise people to stick to the 4 Ps so you don't blow your word count out and send me emails saying, can you go over the word count? So keep that in mind, please. So the extra elements I talked about are people, so the people who deliver the service itself, how they're trained up, their quality, how happy they might be. The processes are how we deliver a service. Is it efficient and effective? And does it provide a high quality of offering? And the physical facilities themselves, so it could be anything to do with the physical environment of when and how the service is delivered. So moving on to how we might classify services. They can be classified on whether the service affects the customer directly or there's something the customer owns, or whether it's just a service the consumer buys at that moment in time and they have to keep on buying the service again. For example, a cup of coffee. So this is how we can classify services. So based on the tangible actions and intangible actions, and then whether we end up possessing or not that actual service or the tangibility of the service itself. So that's table 9.2. Have a read of it and understand the difference here between tangibility of actions and intangibility of actions of a service delivery. Now, there's another part here I talked about already about how the lines become very blurred between intangible and tangible, and in fact, how would you know that something is intangible nowadays, because it adds that tangibility aspect to it, as discussed before. So we have a continuum scale where we can look at and say, on the scale here, where does something match up as being intangible or tangible? And again, as a strategy, maybe there's things here you can add to make your service more tangible if you're doing one for your major assignment on the individual topics. And then again, look at maybe you want to add less tangible or take away tangibility and add more intangibility features and services to what you offer to people. So it's something to consider and look at for sure. It's how you have that balancing act between tangible and intangible and what your market is after. Never forget that in marketing, any theory, any chapter, any week, it's always about the customer. You want to meet their needs, and if their needs are to have more tangible over intangible, that's what you deliver. Or vice versa, that's what you deliver. So it's something to always remember in marketing. The theory is always based around providing the customer with what they need so we can exchange an offering with them. Based on that, we have goods dominated products. So these are tangible products where we have supporting services. For example, it could be like a consumer helpline with your cup of coffee, which you may buy, with your bag of coffee you may buy at the supermarket. So, or a car, for example, which may have a contact line for after-hour services. So it's adding that intangible aspect to a tangible product. In B2B marketing, we may have equipment or facility-based services where it's a big mix of tangibility and intangible, but it's hard to, again, discern which one's dominant over the other. An example is a restaurant which has the tangible aspects of the food and the surroundings, along with the intangible elements of service and atmosphere. So what it means is operational factors is where the company operates in, location factors about how it might be conveniently located, and environmental factors. So this really relates into the physical evidence aspect of the services marketing mix. When it comes to people-based services, so this is the people aspect of the services marketing mix, there might be products which are highly intangible and depend upon people delivering them. Now, education is one. You guys depend upon me to do my job well, so you can understand marketing concepts and theory and practices. Other examples, though, might be entertainment or medical or health services, where you're depending upon a person to provide you with a service and a quality of service that will make you exchange value with the organisation and brand. Now, sometimes on these people-based services, we make consumers part of the service process. So think about airlines and how they now get you to check yourself in with your boarding pass, check your bag in, allocate yourself a seat. If you think about it, they've taken a lot of factors away from them delivering and onto you, yet the price hasn't changed, which means basically, though, that they're deriving their profit from their consumers now taking on the role of providing their own service. So in fact, the price has changed because now we're doing more than we ever used to as customers. So you might also find that with self-checkouts at Coles and Woolworths. So some differences between tangible or goods and intangible or services is that with services there is no customer ownership at all. So you're basically leasing a service, as it were, from the service provider. So you don't ever have ownership of someone making you a cup of coffee. Every time you want someone to make you a cup of coffee, you have to walk in and buy that service to be done for you at the time. They are intangible performances. So in other words, it's going to vary because different people will deliver different services, which means it's going to vary for that matter in itself. And consumers can be involved in the production or service, as we talked before. And a good thing for some companies, there's no inventories they have to carry on their balance sheets, which means there's no costs to worry about when it comes to carrying stock. But on the other hand, there could be demand-based factors which influence the quality of service delivery. Other factors which are important is time factor. The time factor is a very important difference between a tangible good and an intangible service. And services have different distribution channels. For example, websites or apps, as we call them nowadays as well, are coming out where we can access a service. It can also be very difficult to evaluate the service for different reasons, like who might be doing the service, even what mood they're in. If you ever turn up to work a little bit happy, it means that day customers are usually happy as well because they get you delivering a high quality of service. When it comes to understanding core and augmented services, again, what we talked about in the product chapter in the week before or the hour before, whenever you're watching these things, is again to look at the core, actual, and augmented. And what is the actual core service, what is the actual service, and then what is the augmented service. As an example here of banking, it is an important one to look at in the modern context of how much banking is now done online compared to the past, and how effective that's making banking now in modern day times. And of course, talking about the internet and apps, services are growing exponentially every single year on the internet. We can now do so many services on the internet, banking, travel, music, finding jobs. So much of our life is now online. It's amazing. So the service encounter itself, let's talk about this. Let's move away from that other theory about the 7 Ps of marketing and the differences between a tangible product and an intangible service. Let's talk about the service encounter itself. This is the moment of truth, as some people call it, because it's where all your marketing theory becomes practice and the consumer buys the practice, not the theory. So the dimensions of the service encounter. Two main dimensions here which influence the service encounter itself are the social contact and the physical dimension. Social contact is through the company employees and how they deliver the quality of service at the time. And the physical dimension is due to the physical environment, or the physical evidence as we call it. So it could be anything through the mood of the service encounter, the behaviour of the staff, the satisfaction. So the servicescape itself, so the music in the background could influence the mood, all this type of thing makes up the dimensions of the service encounter. Think about any service encounter you go to, all these factors combine to deliver the service encounter itself. Providing service quality, this is the customer's overall judgment about the service's performance. So it's not based on what the organisation thinks ever. It's always based on what the customer sees and evaluates as the service delivery. So this view is established by comparison against the customer's expectations. So what we want to do in marketing when you come to any aspect is to under-promise, over-deliver. Don't ever over-promise and under-deliver, because then we have a gap, and that's not something you want. So what we need to do is make sure that the customer's expectations are matched by what we can actually do as an organisation. The temptation could be there to say you might do more, but it's better to say you might do less and hit those marks in the customer's head than to under-deliver and have a disappointment or gap or dissonance in the consumer's mind. So based on this, we want to look at the dimensions of service quality where gaps could emerge. There are search qualities, so can the consumer search around and do comparison of our service delivery? Their experience qualities itself, so what happens during that the moment when they consume the product itself, what's the experience they have right there and then of the service itself. Then there's the credibility factors and qualities of the service, whether you can actually feel like you needed all those attributes of the service delivered and you may have paid for. In this case, I talk about a car service, like did you need to get all those things fixed up in the car? So it works on your believability and trust on your relationship with the service provider, which then leads into a way of having a measurement based on those dimensions of the service quality itself. We call this SERVQUAL. What we're trying to look with SERVQUAL is the quality of service expected and that which was delivered, which then leads to were there gaps between what the consumer expected to happen and what actually did happen. So the dimensions of service quality are reliability, assurance, empathy, tangibility aspect, and responsiveness. And these 5 dimensions of SERVQUAL are very important to understanding how gaps may emerge between what the customer expected and what was delivered. The figure here of a model of service quality, figure 9.2, is very important to understand. Because what this figure here, 9.2, highlights is we have gap 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And this is where we have gaps emerge between, as what I said before, what the consumer expected and what was actually delivered. It is worth noting these gaps as ways in your marketing strategy you can improve upon your service performance. So if one of your objectives is to improve service quality, you may want to look at one of these gaps, or all 5 for that matter, as objectives in your marketing plan. Now, it's up to you, of course, whether you want to do that. It's your decision to make, but it is a consideration you do need to make when it comes to your marketing plan if you're doing a service-based attribute or product for your topic. The 5 gaps, just to cover what they are, the slide might be a bit hard to see there. So the 5 gaps are gap 1, the gap between customer expectations and management perceptions. Gap 2 is the gap between management perceptions and quality standards set by the company. Gap 3 is the gap between established quality standards and service delivery. Gap 4 is the gap between service quality standards and consumer expectations. And Gap 5 is the gap between expected service and the customer's perceived service. Now, if any of those gaps become too big, we have a critical incident occur, which is another way of managing and measuring service quality, is to look at how we manage these critical incidents when they happen. This is where the firm analyzes specific customer complaints in some depth to try and identify why the customer is so angry and upset, and then can it be repaired at all? Sometimes it can't be, sometimes it's just life, there's a difference. It's best to agree to disagree and move on. And you can't make everyone happy in marketing. So sometimes the hardest thing to do is, with a critical incident, is acknowledge to the customer, look, we can't meet your needs. You're best off to go to someone else. Even though you'd like to have a relationship with that customer, sometimes it's best for you to say no, because it can lead to a better perception of your brand in the future by that customer if they ever come back to you, or if you ever offer a new product to them in their market. Some of the strategies to consider for services is that service quality is usually a goal or objective to make by a lot of companies. So understanding where things go wrong with critical incidents, and therefore be able to critically analyze and assess these sort of incidents when they happen, hence why you did the article critique for. Part of the reason was to understand how to do critical assessment for this very particular aspect in services marketing, is in helping you there to assist you improving service quality for your company. When problems occur, firms need to respond to complaints quickly, so you need to have ways where that can happen. Customers hate waiting. Wait times are one of the biggest areas of complaint by customers about a service, so you want to have ways you can respond to complaints quickly by consumers. So you need to have objectives or benchmarks on how you might want to do that. You can select the right target market as well to make sure that you're providing the right service, delivering and value, provide benefits every step of the way, and have a suitable strategy. There are 3 examples of marketing strategies for service firms in table 9.5 in the textbook. Again, it is worthwhile having a look at each of those. Marketing people, this is the people aspect of service delivery. Now, people can be marketed themselves, not just politicians and sporting heroes, entertainers, but also you. You are a product, you are a brand. You are going to market yourself when you finish this course to an employer one day in the future. So how do you market yourself? How do you build your brand up? What attributes would you expect that a product or brand is looking for in you? And what service delivery can you provide to that brand itself? So it's important to understand how people are becoming a very important part of marketing of services, but also products in their own right. We can also market places and ideas as intangible services. So place marketing here in Canberra, we've seen the CBR campaign run quite extensively in local media and press, based around making Canberra a better place to visit in people's minds. And idea marketing is trying to convince people about an idea, or social marketing, as it were, that they need to adopt. So it could be drink driving, or undertaking more exercise, or drinking more water. Cheers. Or whatever it happens to be. So it's marketing that idea itself. The future of services, undoubtedly services are growing and becoming more important as time goes on. So the future of services is becoming a lot more important as we look at how things are changing due to globalization, changing demographics, and the advances made in technology, particularly when it comes to mobile and smart devices. Well, that's it for this week, and that's it for this chapter. Go through each of these really important points here as a way of recapping what I've just talked about, hopefully what you've listened to, and if you need to, hit replay and hear me all over again for this fun, exciting, and action-packed talk on services marketing. This is Dr. Andrew Hughes signing out from level 105 of the ANU Research School of Management building here in downtown Canberra in Acton. That's it for this week. I'll talk to you next time. Stay in contact. Be good to each other. Bye for now.